for me, and I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We have a quorum, so I call this meeting of the Allocations Committee to order at 4:42 p.m. The first item on our agenda is the minutes. You should have those in your packet. And at this point, I'd be happy to take a motion if anybody is ready to make one.
Madam Chair, I so move that we accept the minutes from the April 2nd meeting.
We have a motion from Commissioner Jackson. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Bodell. Is there any discussion? Everybody's name spelled right? Okay, all in favor? Any opposition? The motion has passed unanimously. The second item on our agenda, the second voting item is the recommendation of the Arts Activate Round 3, but we will have a briefing on that first, and I will turn the microphone over to Julia Posh.
Hi, folks. Just as a reminder, Arts Activate is our project-based cultural funding program. And the goal is to fund public arts and culture events that activate Dallas communities through the arts. The purpose, we are going to grow Dallas's, Drea, if we can move forward 2 slides. Thanks. The purpose is if we can grow Dallas's artistic footprint, provide public benefit, increase inclusivity, connect individuals across Dallas, and connect with Dallas communities. So that's what we're trying to do in all these projects. Go one more. Some examples of, since I know we have some folks on this committee who this will be their first time voting for scenarios. So we're going to look at just a couple example projects that we funded last year. We funded the Dallas Film Society doing their film festival. Natalia Padilla is an individual artist who did a project called Blue that took over the Vickery Meadow Branch Library. And we've done local composers like Hee Young Kim wrote Strings Across the Pacific, who performed at AT-PAC last year, which was very, very, very cool. So those are the types of projects that we support through this program. A quick recap of this round. We opened in February and closed in March. We received 137 applications, which is a lot. I don't think it's the record for what we've received in the past 3 years, but it's real close. 72 of those were artists, 65 of those were 501c3s, and only 6 were disqualified due to not having a public event, having an address outside of Dallas, or a proposal for murals on public property, which we don't do through this program. That in itself, I want to take just a second. I know we're going to go quickly and efficiently through this meeting today, but that in itself, I really have to commend my 2 team members working on this, Catherine Haskell and Kayla Jordan. The fact that 131 people submitted perfectly valid applications that could be great benefits to the city is incredible. And we will continue to think on how we will work with those artists that we aren't able to support through this program this time. But I think that says a lot about how wide their reach has been and how carefully they have stewarded these relationships with our artists. So thank you. Panel scoring took place from March to April. We had 39 wonderful panelists. Thank you to those who have nominated folks in this year. This program's annual budget is $1.3 million. To date, we have spent $480,200 on 48 projects in round 1, $385,150 in round 2 for 38 projects, and therefore we have $434,450 left to spend in round 3. I have a little asterisk that there is one program that we are still waiting to get signatures on. If we cannot get that one off the ground, we may be able to assign 12,000 more to artists that we're going to create on sort of a wait list, but that's not promised, and we really do hope that they get it together in the next week or so. So with that, the total budget for round 3 is $434,450 with a potential wait list of 12K. While in some years we've been able to add to this amount, we are not going to do that this round. The scenarios that we gave you go not a cent over that budget. Okay. 2 scenarios are in front of you. There is the blue scenario, which for everyone who earned a normalized score of above 90%, we offer all of your ask. So 42 projects funded out of those 137 applications. So that's about 32%. It's 20 individual artists and 22 nonprofit organizations. Everybody gets all that they asked for, funds all projects that got 90% or above. The only exception to that is Group B, just funding. We came to the end of the funding and there were 2 organizations very close and one of them already received COP funding. So that is where we drew the line. 6 organizations were previously funded through Arts Activate and 5 were previously funded through COP. Our total budget spend is $433,250. There's an extra like $1,000 there that we can put to culture of value later in the summer. So we won't let it go, but we won't spend it here because we wouldn't want to give someone a grant of only $1,200. The other scenario is yellow. This is partial funding for organizations so that we get more organizations in the door. This funds 46 applications, so it brings us to 35%. It's 20 individual artists again. This time it's 26 nonprofit organizations. It's 4 more than the blue scenario, and we pulled them from our smallest organizations, 3 in Group A, and we went ahead and grabbed that one from Group B that was really close. Individual artist projects are still funded at all of their ask. The reason for that is individual artists, we are very often the only funder. And so if we are going to provide less money than somebody has asked for, we have to be willing to accept less project than we had originally asked for in their proposal. And typically, if you're giving less money to an individual artist where we're the only funder, it will drastically change the scope of the work. Whereas nonprofits very often have other funders. And so if they get 1,000 or 2,000 left, they can still do the work and we can negotiate the scope of it a little bit, but the event will probably still happen. So this lets more people come through the door, but all nonprofits are only funded at a partial amount. So it's between about 65 to 80%. This also funds nonprofits that received Arts Activate or COP this year at a little bit less than applicants who haven't received anything this year. So this funds most of the projects that scored 89 and above, and 7 previously funded through Arts Activate, 6 previously funded through COP. Our total budget spend, we're going to spend every dollar is $434,450. Just as a comparison, as a reminder, I know these look different, but we only present scenarios that we would be comfortable enacting. So there are no wrong choices. In both cases, we're going to fund 20 individual artists, everything they ask for, because these projects are more likely to have the city as the only funder. And in both scenarios, we're going to fund at least 1 project in every single district. Yay. Not that that's something we score on, but it's nice to know. The blue version honors the whole ask of nonprofits. In general, we always fund at 100% of the ask. And I really feel strongly about that because if we don't provide the whole ask, we may need to adjust the scope of work. And this can be a lot for both the nonprofit and our OSC staff to adjust. However, we're still putting this version forward to you for your consideration because in every case, we're providing the majority of the ask and we can still require the majority of the project and support more smaller organizations. And especially in a competitive round, even 10K can be meaningful to a lot of folks. So.
Okay, before we go to questions, 2 things. I'd like to first ask Julia, if you're comfortable, if staff has a recommendation to share that with us. And then before we have any discussion, I'd like to just take a quick check by show of hands and see if there is favor for one scenario over the other, because everybody's had an opportunity to review these documents. If we're all leaning one way, we can ask those questions about one scenario rather than engaging in a lengthy discussion on both. So first question, do you feel comfortable and would you mind sharing staff recommendation?
Could we do your straw poll first?
Yes. Let me ask by show of hands, who favors the blue scenario? 1, 2. So we have, and then who, okay. And who favors the yellow scenario? 1, 2, 3. We're tied because I favor the blue scenario. So I was hoping this would be easy. Okay. Not that comment was not intended to change anybody's mind. So go ahead, Julia.
Staff favors the blue.
You want to share with us why?
Yeah, just because when we don't give somebody all, like I was saying earlier, when we don't give somebody all that they ask for, it puts us in a position of needing to adjust the scope of work that they're proposing to do. So if they said, we can do 3 days of a workshop for $12,000 and we're only going to give them 10, we may need to settle for 2 workshops. And that's fundamentally not the same program that went in front of panel. So we get into some sort of dicey gray area of the project that we may then agree on is not necessarily the same one that the panel saw. And to make it fair, in the yellow version, we've done that to everybody. And that is lift on staff. And it's lift on the staff of those organizations too.
So given that we're kind of in a dead tie, I am going to open the floor to questions. We're going to do one round. So when I call on you, if you want to make your case for which scenario or you have questions or both, let's do that. Okay. Anybody comments or questions? Commissioner Trezilla.
So I'll start. Having been on the allocations committee for quite some time, I see this happen quite a bit where group 3 kind of gets the raw end of the deal. And in the last 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, please, but we've funded almost all of them 100%. And is that correct?
Always. Yes.
Yes, there
Yeah.
have only been a couple situations that we have done partial
Right.
to get somebody in the door. This would be very different than precedent.
Yep. And so that's number 1, that I really like that. Number 2, I'm a big proponent of, if we're going to have a scoring system, let's stick with the scoring system. And I really appreciate the fact that we have a clear cutoff for this. And I think the groups deserve to be funded 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Trezillo. Commissioner Jackson.
My question was just a point of clarification or just insight. Which organizations just wouldn't be funded? What, do you know?
If you take a look at, I don't know if I have anything digital with you. Okay, so in the project descriptions that Catherine provided for you for nonprofits, all of the ones up front, the blue scenario are the ones that will be provided in both. And then the very end, the last few are the ones that would only be funded in the yellow version. Catherine, I see you on the screen.
they
Would
are
you
right here.
mind?
Here they are.
Perfect. Okay, they are doing our part through educating, empowering, and entertaining. Dope Fusion, Flamenco Fever's Vanguard Variety Show. Notably, Julia Alcantara gets funded both ways in the individual, but the Flamenco Fever one is on the border for yellow. Olimpakski Ballet Company International Day of Indigenous Peoples and Hispanic Heritage Month, and Prism Movement Theater Scrap Heart Workshop. Prism Movement Theater is already an Arts Activate grantee. Olimpakski is already CAP. Flamenco Fever is already COP. So the only organization that we would not be funding this year at all is Dope.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spellacy.
I'm on the same page as Commissioner Trezilla, and it sounds like staff as well. I think while I would be okay kind of with either situation, I think the blue is a better choice, especially with the smaller organizations getting funded at less than the ask. It may mean that their project can't go forward, or like Julia said, it may have to be reduced in scope. And I would prefer, I don't think that the number that we would fund in the other scenario is worth the possibility of either losing some projects because of a reduction of funding, or a reduction of scope of the projects that were proposed. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Spellacy. Commissioner Valentine. We can't hear you.
Valentine, Chair. Thank you.
I know. The minute it came out of my mouth. Sorry.
You're just gonna keep teasing me. That's what you're gonna do.
I
For
will.
the record.
Yes, exactly. I will share with you
I-
guys next meeting why I'm so scattered today.
Well, I hope all is well. Just a comment, because I think this is my second round to Commissioner Trezilla's like talking about rhythm, and having been on the other side of this, receiving 100% of the ask really helps any project versus so initially, as much as I like the idea of 5 extra organizations essentially receiving funding, I can appreciate the precedent and the value of funding the ask at 100%. So that was my comment towards the recommendations.
So does that put you in favor of the blue now, Commissioner Valentin?
Yes, Chair.
Commissioner Bodell?
In light of staff comments as well, I mean, that informs a lot more. And the creating a heavier lift for staff, it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. So I with more information, I do feel like I could lean toward blue very easily.
Commissioner Jackson? Okay. Okay, so now it appears that we may be unanimous in support of the blue scenario. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they want to ask or make before we put it to a vote? That being the case, I would be happy to entertain a motion as to which of these scenarios we move forward with at this time.
Chair, I move that we accept the blue proposal as presented.
We have
I'll
a motion
second.
from Commissioner Trezilla and a second from Commissioner Spellacy. All in favor? Is there any further discussion? The motion has passed unanimously.
I have a quick question, if that's okay. I know we,
Sure.
my question is actually, if we end up with that additional 12,000 because the project from the other round is not able to go forward, where is going to be your suggestion that be allocated?
We have a couple of options. One is we would go to that organization that was really, really close to that 90% of where we hit the break in blue. And one option is 2 individual artists, each getting 6,000. So we would, if it comes to that, we will present you with that in June.
Thank you. The next briefing is a preview of fiscal year 2026-2027 cultural COP applications and panels. And Julia will be briefing us on this item.
All right. Okay, so just as a review, the difference, we're going to shift gears into our larger program. COP is our year of cultural services. You know the eligibility requirements. We have talked a lot about them, but here they are. We typically award funding as a percentage of revenue. We let them choose if that percentage of you is either last year or a 3-year average. And the funding comes from general fund and hot tax, which we will speak about a little later. Just a reminder of sort of where we've gone over the last few years. 3 years ago, we instituted a minimum for each tier as a percentage of revenue to sort of lessen the bridge of organizations that were approximately the same size so they get closer to the same amount of money. 2 years ago, we changed our guidelines to begin a 3-year cycle, and last year was the first year of that, which means that this year is an off year. So most of our applicants had significantly shorter application requirements with no video and no panel. And I am here to tell you they were very appreciative of that. So thank you all for your hard work on that last year. A little bit about how the selection process goes. If we can look at the timeline, Drea, thank you so much. The organizations applied March through April. April to May is the panel review. Next Thursday will be our Q&A and wrap-up sessions. Again, there's only one day because we're only talking to the new organizations. Returning organizations do not have to do this. So there's only 5 people, so there's only one day. I will make sure to send that link to this committee. So if you'd like to listen into that Q&A, you are more than welcome. June, OAC staff will combine the scores. We will bring it to you in July and August. We will take it to ACAC in September, and we'll take it to council sometime in October or November. Okay, we got 70 full applications. All 65 submitted on-time applications, and we do need to celebrate that a second. That is not always the case every year. So thank you all, especially those who've been really active liaisons with your organizations. That does not help with a lot. That does not happen without a lot of proactive nudging from you. So thank you.
Well,
We
thank you
also
for
got,
thank you so much for sending the email to remind our groups. Because that was
It-
an instant reminder as a commissioner that, oh, I can reach out to them. So thank you.
Adriana, thank you for getting that done. She got it for all of y'all, personalized. So thank you. Okay, 5 new participants are AT&T Performing Arts Center. They are coming off an agreement that we had separately about the building, and they are now entering the COP application process. Dallas Film Festival is a commonly funded Arts Activate group. They are here in COP, which is very exciting. GDC, I was about to call them GDYO. Nope. GDCC is applying. They are just now 3 years old. They are a tier 3 organization. Oaklawn Band is another very common Arts Activate group that is large enough this year. We're really excited for them. And Thanksgiving Square Foundation is a tier 3 group that has not traditionally been part of programming until 2 years ago. It started getting Arts Activate funding. We funded a few projects from them over the past few years. So we're excited that they're here too. Returning organizations will be judged on administrative scores only. And that's all I have to talk about COP. So next month, I'll start bringing you panel scores and we'll start talking about exactly how this is going to go. But that's all I have for today of just what you can expect. Anybody have any questions on that? Sorry, Commissioner Valentin and Spellacy. Okay.
Thank you, Julia. Just a clarifying question on the 5 new applications.
Uh-huh.
Would they begin a 3-year cycle from this point moving forward?
Nope. They will join so this is their year 1. They will then get an off year with everybody else next year. But whenever the real year 1 comes again, guess what? They got to do it too. So I'm not going to deal with it, a whole bunch of different start dates.
No rolling
Nobody has time for
admissions.
that.
Thank you. Yep.
And Commissioner Spellacy.
Can you remind me what the timeline is on COP? Like when we actually do the allocation for it?
We will vote in August and then take your recommendation to ACAC for their vote in September. And then we go to council in October.
So I guess the reason I wanted a reminder on that is because of what we're looking at budget wise with the city, how that might affect, it may be really difficult to add new groups this year
That's
without
correct.
reducing funding for existing groups. So I was just wondering if you were allowed to talk about that yet, or if we have to wait until we have a more solid idea of what's happening with the budget.
Well, Martine is here and I think would be a better.
Hey, Commissioner Spellacy, in response to your question, yes, we'll have to wait until there's more information about our budget development. Our meeting with the city manager is June 18th. And then, of course, we'll enter, I'm assuming, into the budget town hall season after the book is presented to the public. I don't have a date for that yet. I think she has to take all of her meetings with city departments and then decide when the budget book will be presented. And we're still, the timeline won't be impacted, of course. It's the same cadence as always in terms of the timeline to get allocations presented to council in October, but subject to the budget development process in terms of dollars allocated for the total
And
program.
are we getting more hot tax this year, this coming budget year than last year? I remember there was a deal where it incrementally increased every year for a certain number of years, but I don't know where we are in that process.
My first response is, hot is projected first and then collected on the back end. So there's no way for me to respond to that definitively.
Oh, I wasn't meeting the
Okay.
exact dollar amount. I was meeting the percentage like allocation to OAC, because I know that I don't remember how long ago it was now, but there was like a deal where it was incrementally increasing by % per year.
So in March, the council action item went forward for us to move from 12.5 to the cap of 15%, and that'll be effective 10/1.
Thank you, Director. Okay, if there are no further questions, we're going to move on to the next briefing, which is the use of hot tax for funding programs. And I'm going to give you a little preamble here. This is just an initial briefing. We are not going to have a lengthy discussion about it today. It's just a briefing from Julia. Take it home, noodle over it. If you have questions, send them to office staff via email, and we'll have a more full opportunity for discussion at the next meeting. But we wanted to move forward with kind of giving you a high-level view of where we are.
Great. So basically things to know if you don't have your Texas tax code memorized. Chapter 351 is the use of tax revenue. There's a two-part test. Criteria 1 says revenue from the hot tax may only be used to directly enhance and promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry. Criteria 2 is every expenditure of hot funds must fit into one of 6 categories. One of those categories is art. Okay, the history of how we have used the hot funds at OAC. We have only considered the cultural organizations program for these expenditures because of its significant application and documentation process. There is a lot of documentation that goes into this. And we have historically looked at only at COP organizations with headquarters in Dallas cultural districts, like Dallas Arts District and Deep Ellum, or clearly documented tourist audiences like the Sixth Floor Museum. Other programs such as Arts Activating CAP have not been considered for use of the hot tax because those programs are primarily meant to serve the residents of Dallas and may not provide the same documentation of tourism. On April 6th, the Dallas City Auditor's Office published the audit of cultural programs. One of their observations was that we have not established a formalized process to determine and document which cultural programming directly enhances and promotes tourism. And sufficient documentation is not retained to substantiate eligibility for hotel occupancy tax reimbursement. So recommendation was to develop that process, and our response is the process will be formalized. And you can read more about that. The second recommendation was to establish a standardized documentation practice to substantiate that hot tax reimbursements for our programs directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry in accordance with that Texas Tax Code, Chapter 351. Oops, can you go back just a second? Thanks. And our response is we are going to develop a checklist to ensure that our documentation substantiates that. Implement it to ensure the documentation substantiates that the hot tax reimbursements for art products that directly promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry in accordance with that tax code. And that's what we're going to talk about and show you. So here it is. Just a couple disclaimers before we start. While this checklist is pretty robust to consider all hot eligible expenditures, we're going to focus on funding programs. The checklist and workflow will serve as OAC's implementation of those audit recommendations to establish that formalized and documented process. This is for internal use, and there is no vote today related to this item, but we wanted to make sure that you, as the Allocations Committee, are aware of the work that we're doing. We do welcome any thoughts, thoughts, questions, input, and feedback. And again, this is a draft, so thank you in advance for helping us clean it up. Okay, this is in my former life, I was a consultant. We made a lot like this. So here we go. So this is the overall picture of what we're looking at. What starts the process is an application includes a question about the promotion of tourism, both in Arts Activate and COP, but we're predominantly for this be talking about the ones in COP. We ask it in Arts Activate too, just so that we can document it, but this is for COP. The first step is that staff, when that question is clicked, will complete an eligibility request form that basically says, is this part of an eligible hot category? We will do a unique request form for every single organization through COP that checks that box and we think would fulfill possible use of using hot. There will be a lot of documentation attached to that, which we'll talk about in a second. That form will go to OAC executive staff to review and recommend the organization. Does the proposed expenditure directly promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry? If executive staff says yes, we pass it to our budget team who says, does the proposed expenditure correctly budget for hot funding? There's a lot of documentation as a part of that. If they sign it off, then we send the contract for signatures. And if all that is done and we have this completed contract and we're ready to roll and we have a wonderful COP year, which we will, the last step will be compliance verification, which will include attendance, visitor origin data collected, and invoice and deliverables documented, among other documentation. So all that you're going to read, basically, those are the 4 steps that we will go through for every organization that uses HOT as part of its COP funding. So let's look at each step individually. So step 1, that eligibility request form, we're answering promotion of the arts, direct promotion and enhancement of tourism. What might that look like? And then supporting documentation would include a tourism impact statement, attendance projections, historic visitor attendance records, marketing plans, and then a budget. And then that staff requester signature and date. Step 2 is to send that to executive staff. And that will look like, if we keep going to the next one, eligibility evaluation and recommendation. They too will do a documentation review of, do we have the form? Do we have the budget? Do we have the description of deliverables, contract MOU or vendor agreement, draft? And then that will go to internal review and signed off by our executive staff. That will go to our budget staff, which are our business operations team, which will look and see if those HOT funded expenses are coded appropriately. Backup documentation for every HOT funded cost, clear separation of HOT versus not expenses, pre-approved budget on file. That will be signed off by budget staff. And finally, at the very end, once the whole project is done for the year, that compliance, if we can go to the next one, compliance verification, that post-event or program requirements that will include attendance data, visitor origin data, promotion evidence, documentation of hotel convention impact, final report, invoices and deliverables, and a summary of outcomes. This is centers around eligibility and compliance of funding programs, but we will also be maintaining another process that looks at where else we might be able to use those HOT eligible funds. And those expenses might include promoting our current projects beyond local reach, administrative costs related to the allocation and expenditures of HOT funds, and other non-programmatic expenditures that directly impact tourism through the promotion of the arts. And that's it.
Questions? And we want to be sure you get your questions answered, but we want to postpone any lengthy discussion until we get past the draft stage. Commissioner Truzilla.
So 2 questions. One, on the COP form, are we going to be asking our groups themselves, do you think you qualify for HOT budget allocations?
No, what we ask on their application is, do you receive out-of-town visitors to your programs? If so, how many? Through which avenues?
Got it. Got it. Also. And then the second one is, how are you going to separate the two? So let's just take a project that's our group that's in District 12 and one that's in the Arts District, 2 completely different audiences potentially. And are you saying that the one that's in the downtown area, you're not going to get any of the general fund, you're only going to get HOT money? And the one in District 12, you're only going to get the general fund money?
So we're talking about COP organizations for this funding. So
Right.
if you look at the last resolution, for example, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Hey there, Commissioner. Let me respond. 2 things. Noting that Julia's presentation pertains to COP funding program.
Right.
Eligible organizations or programs under the auspice of a particular organization are either general funded or HOT funded based on that eligibility. In the past, we've already noted the difference. When we take these items to council every October, the funding code is noted every single year. So it's not that we're doing anything new or different. We're just being a bit more black and white and transparently clear, subject to the opinion of the auditor, about how that determination has been made by staff in the past. So to answer your question about district location, the Arts District is unique in that it's a cultural district. Most activities that occur in a cultural district technically are eligible for hotel occupancy tax simply because they took place in an arts district that's designated by TCA. In District 12, if this COP organization pulls the crowd under the guide, whatever we qualify as cultural tourism, then they would be eligible. They're not ineligible because they're in far north Dallas or far south Dallas. Has to do with eligibility based on the criteria noted in HOT for HOT.
Perfect, perfect. And I
Okay.
just picked District 12 just because I knew it wasn't in the
And
cultural.
hey,
center.
some people love visiting District 12. I'm out of town. I'm technically an out of town visitor when I go up there.
I don't know whose hand went up first. So Commissioner Spellacy.
I guess my question is, and you guys may not, I guess, may not be able to answer this because, but the city auditor's report, I mean, where did they get their interpretation of this state law? Because when I read the law, very clearly, everything that we fund falls into it. Like without question, it talks about the promotion and improvement of the arts, which is basically all we do. So it seems to me what they're asking you guys to do is like way overkill for what really needs to be done, and it's definitely not on par with what other cities, even other cities of our size, are doing. So I guess I'm a little curious about why they've decided now that this has to be,
So
kind of
I'm gonna
overkill.
jump in. I'm going to jump in, Commissioner Spellacy, and share a couple of things. First of all, I would encourage everybody to do what we always do, which is check in with your city council member and make sure that they understand that this is what we have been doing all along. I'd also like to kind of share the perspective of my council member about the purpose of an audit. Purpose of an audit is not to catch something being done wrong, it's to help us do our jobs better. And as I understand this from speaking with staff, what this represents is we have been funding correctly all along. We are just going to do some additional documentation and checklisting. And I think it's really important because we have the ears of our council members that we make sure that they understand that up front. Is that fair? Would you like to add anything?
Can I call you after this meeting, Commissioner Spellacy?
Yeah, because my
kidding,
follow-up
but-
was going to be like, what additional burden does that add to the office? Because
Well,
it may
please.
constitute an additional,
Well, I'm happy to address
staff
that.
member or something that we may need in order to get this deep into what they're wanting done.
I appreciate your feedback very much, Commissioner Spellacy. And here are a few things I have to share. One, the recommendations put forth by our interim city auditor, as noted in the report, staff, we only have two options. When you receive a recommendation within the bounds of those reports, you're gonna agree to the recommendations or accept the risk noted within the report. Those are the two options. And, as a director of this office, I don't find it wise to note that we'd accept risk related to HOT use or anything else noted within the bounds of that report, to be frank. And so we are acknowledging the burden on our staff, our small and mighty staff, and some of what would be noted as burden to the folks in our ecosystem, who by and large have small and mighty staffs as well, staff size as well, to support their efforts in the work that they do here. So Glenn and Anna and I have been working tirelessly through our engagement with the city auditor's office. They're very clear in knowing, like all of our sister municipalities in the state of Texas, any municipality that has an Office of Arts and Culture or an Office of Cultural Affairs subject to using HOT, we have a lot of clear guidance in how we're supposed to navigate those funds, what's an appropriate use, what's inappropriate. Following the publishing of the report, I believe Glenn sent that link to the HOT toolkit along with our response to what's noted in the report. I invite y'all to toggle around that HOT toolkit. It is very user-friendly. I find it, they speak in layman's terms in case you don't want to go drowning in the tax code. The HOT toolkit is based and rooted in the state tax codes around hotel occupancy tax, allowable uses. One thing that I'm grateful for as it stands today is that municipalities with offices like ours are not subject to heads and beds as the metric that governs if you're doing what you're supposed to do with hot funds. The MOU that the Texans for the Arts have in existence with the Texas Hotel Lodging Association goes into further detail around how offices like ours can and have to use hotel occupancy tax. And that's the way we've been operating in my last 3.5 years in service here. You have fully funded offices of cultural affairs across the state, fully hot funded, to be clear, who do not have to furnish reports forward that we're going to have to furnish forward. They can furnish attendance records that simply justify their use of hot funds. As far as I know, this is supposed to let us stand up as a leader, I guess, in the state of Texas in terms of our reporting next fiscal year. So we'll see where we land. I have some concerns, especially as we're enduring an overtime freeze, because my staff is already working at capacity, to be frank. But we'll figure it out.
So short version, the office needs all of our support on this issue. Commissioner Valentin?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate Commissioner Spellecy's line of questions and your comments, Director, related to those lines of questions around capacity, because I know that some of this will also fall on the organizations who are recipients of HOT. And I wanted to just be clear about that in terms of where in the diagram, in the framework diagram you provided us, Julia, thank you. That would be in compliance verification. So like box
Yep.
4 really falls on the contractees, correct?
Yes, and our staff will need to verify everything they turn in.
Okay. And relatedly on the frameworks page, under start, it includes Arts Activate, whereas you begin, really saying this is about the COP program. So I was just wondering about that particular difference there.
That's correct. We're building this framework to be used for any program that might be eligible. To date,
see.
we have never used it for Arts Activate. We
Got it.
do ask Arts Activate, do they plan on having tourists? But it's mostly so that we can talk to our Office of Special Events if they need a permit.
Thank you. And just to harken back to what the director said as part of our comments here, related to the usefulness of the hot tax toolkit. As someone who served on the board of Texans for the Arts during the development of that, which came from some very specific private funding to help, push all of us across the state to take advantage of this incredible tool. I also find it very puzzling, this particular layer that your staff and our city ultimately, including our residents and citizens who are actively contributing to our culture and the larger framework of making Dallas an exciting place to visit and live, is so problematic. So notes from the chair heard, and just needed to say that at least the toolkit is useful. And if there are additional narrative tools that we need to use or can deploy around the use of hot tax to our representatives and anyone, and let me know.
So I'm going to say one more thing and then, did you have anything else? Um, Listening to these comments and all of the concern, this would not be an action that well, maybe it is an action that the Allocations Committee could take. I would have to speak with our chair, but we could at some point after we've been presented with everything from staff, we could certainly explore the appropriate methods to send a message to the city council regarding these issues as a commission. And so if that's something you have interest in, we can talk about that further in the next meeting. But I can say, and I think you can tell this from the briefing, staff has been doing everything that they can to meet the requirements that have been placed by this audit, but it is not a change in the way we fund. We have always funded consistently with the statute. So that's a message we need to keep saying to everyone, to our city council members and the public to the extent you receive any questions about that. So if everybody's comfortable, we could at this time move on to the next briefing, which is the culture of value timeline. I don't want to cut anybody off though. Are we good?
This will be real quick. Culture of Value is our micro grant program. It's wonderful. We put artists in libraries and rec centers for one day, one time arts and culture experiences, particularly friendly for people who don't work with us because the application is short. And they get a free venue, which is great. This year, we're going to do 28 events in all 14 districts, 2 per district. And to ensure that we can still stay within city spending guideline and ensure 2 projects per district, award maximums will not exceed $2,500. Applications are going to open Tuesday, the 26th, close June 15. We will read applications for a combined panel of OAC, DPL, and PKR. That's unique to this program. It's not our usual panel. It's library and rec center staff because they're deciding what projects would be best fit for their audiences and spaces. We will notify folks of their matches in July. We will also let you know who was funded. It's not one that we need an allocations vote for because the amounts are small, but we like to tell you anyway so that you can get excited about which events are coming to your district. And Culture Value Month, mark your calendars now, will be September 1 through 30, 2026. There you go.
Questions? Great. Next on our agenda is the Allocations Committee Chair updates, and I have no updates. Does anyone have anything they want to share, updates in your neck of the woods? Right. We will move on to staff updates.
Just giving you a preview of the summer. Culture Value opens May 26th. The very next day, CAP and Arts Activate guidelines both go to City Council. And we open CAP June 2nd, and we have our allocations meeting June 4th, which will be our first discussion of those panel scores that will have just come in. June 16, Arts Activate 2027 round 1 opens. So we've got a pretty exciting summer and funding teams. July, we're also moving to a new grants management software, all in June. So it's going to be a great time. July 9, we have allocations. August 6th, allocations again. That will be our vote to recommend the CAP allocations in August, and September will be our vote for Arts Activate round 1.
We need to talk about that.
Okay.
July 9th.
Okay. We moved it away from the 4th.
I know.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we may need to talk about the July meeting date. So
Okay. Great. Do you want to do that now or later?
we'll do
Great.
it next month.
Great. Then I'm done. Yep. That's all she wrote.
That's all. Okay. Well, this may be the meatiest, fastest allocations committee meeting we have ever had. Thank you all for your cooperation and insightful questions and comments as we moved rapidly through a pretty meaty agenda. All business before the allocations committee being concluded, I call the meeting to a close at 5:30 p.m. Thank you very much. I'm not here July 9th. And I did not pick up on that when I was going through this last night. I should have. I am sorry I have to dash. On top of the truck blocking me and my air conditioning.